This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Morning, Bob. How are travels today?
I'm doing well. Yeah, here in the Charlotte airport, waiting on a connection. It's a pretty good airport.
Yeah, I like that airport. They don't have the trains, which actually can be fun, but they can get in the way sometimes. Plenty of places to go have a nice little quiet conversation about sports. So, what do you got? About an hour or so until your next flight? We'll only keep you for another 10, 12 minutes or so. Okay.
Yeah. No, I won't miss my flight. But yeah, this one, if you got a tight connection and you got a ways to go, it can be a little stressful. But as usual, with about a 3-hour layover, I just had a very short trip from where I landed to where my next flight is. But usually if you have about an hour layover, then, it takes you 45 minutes to get to the next gate or something.
Get a load of the trip that he's got going at Lexington, Kentucky. What do you have planned in Lexington? I joked earlier that you were going to hang out with Cal because you and Cal have such great interactions normally. But what's going on in Lexington?
Well, I've got some friends that got a farmhouse there. And so I was going to visit them anyway, and one of them's having a big birthday bash, and that a bunch of people are going to, including me. And but yeah, it's a fun area, and I've been there, numerous times to cover games. But the way it is, during football or basketball season, you fly in. That maybe in basketball you might play the day of the game, or the day before you cover the game, and you fly out. But Lexington, obviously it's horse racing country, and got my friend Charlie's got us lined up to go to a horse farm that has I don't know if it's necessarily horses that won the Triple Crown, but horses who won Triple Crown races. And I know there's at least 4 Belmont winners, I think he said. So I think that's pretty cool because I've never been to a thoroughbred farm like that. And you can see the retired stallions. And, Louisville's really nearby. I've flown to Louisville before to go to events in Lexington because a lot of times it's less expensive. Yeah, but I've never been to Louisville Slugger Museum. They have a Muhammad Ali museum there. Of course, Louisville's his hometown. You're just an hour or so away from Cincinnati, which is kind of a cool town, a cool city. And you have Keeneland. Unfortunately, they're not running. Sorry, I don't think you can hear that. They're not running the horses at Keeneland, but you can go visit the park. That's a real historic old park. They basically not park, an old horse track, but they essentially have kept just like it was like in the 1800s or whatever. So you kind of like you can step back in time when you go out there and visit. So, sorry, this lady's yelling very loud on her loudspeaker.
It's all good, Bob. Besides doing radio interviews when you're at the airport, what's a thing that Bob Holt does when you have a little time? I used to try to find like a Chili's too, or go to the magazine store, get a couple magazine. What is something Bob Holt does when he has a little time? Because airport traveling can be all right sometimes.
I'm sorry, this lady is. I'm not by her, but it's the loudspeaker, and I can't hear you. Hopefully she'll be quiet.
That's all right. She's probably giving some very important information, Bob. No loudspeaker at an airport involves information that is not 100% important for you to make your next flight. So I'm just trying to talk until she's done talking so we can ask more questions here. You can hear us now. When they change your gate sometimes, like you'll be looking at your gate, and so you're like, all right, I'm gonna go by my gate. We're gonna go get something to eat. We got about an hour and 15 minutes, and you'll go in there and you're hanging out. 45 minutes go by, and then you go out there and they're like, oh no, the gate was A18, now it's C35, and you're like, oh my goodness, it boards in 4 minutes. We got to pay our check and go catch the train. Yeah, good luck. Lots of fun.
Yeah, I've had that happen. I had one flight with a long layover, and they kept changing the gate. Like, you get to the new gate, and then they'd say 10 minutes later, oh, now it's this gate.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be kind of crazy. I mean, sometimes flying's real easy, and a lot of times it can present some challenges.
Bob, while the lady is not speaking through the loudspeaker, I want to ask you about your initial thoughts on the death of Ryan Mallett, somebody that you covered for. Really, you would have covered him for 3 years because he had the year that he sat as a transfer, and everybody knew he was going to step into the role the next season. What do you remember about Ryan Mallett, things that stood out to you as a journalist, and maybe some of the conversations you may have had with him throughout the time he played at Arkansas?
Well, yeah, Ryan was a special player, obviously. You can argue maybe the greatest passing quarterback Arkansas ever had. Probably him and Joe Ferguson would be the two great arms that come to mind. And Ryan was obviously no Matt Jones when it came, or Quinn Grovey when it came to running the ball. He couldn't run it like you guys, like Matt and Quinn could. But man, he's such a strong arm, and I think he really developed a good touch. So he wasn't taking, the fingers off the receivers, and such a good group of receivers to work with. All those guys from Warren, Greg Childs, and Jerry Wright, and Chris Gregg, and then of course Joe Adams from Little Rock. And by Petrino, it was really the perfect coach for that passing game. He was the perfect quarterback, and he had all those great receivers and a good offensive line to give him protection. But I guess I remember, I was thinking about this, because you sent me the text about memories, and I know this was a disappointing loss ultimately for Arkansas, but in 2010 when Alabama came in, they were number one, and Mallett threw that wheel route to Ronnie Wingo on the first series, and they just totally caught. It was just perfect execution. They caught Alabama with their pants down on defense, and that's about as loud a roar as I can ever remember at Razorback Stadium. Just the crowd went crazy, and ultimately Alabama came back and won. But that was a really great moment. And then a better game for Arkansas to end that year in the regular season, beat LSU in Little Rock, and to secure the Sugar Bowl did. And at the end of the half, there's 20 seconds left or something, and Arkansas comes out with the ball in their 20, and the announcers were saying, I was there at the game, but I've seen replays, and the announcers for CBS are saying, well, they're just going to take a knee here and run it out. They don't want to do anything stupid and have a turnover or something in their own end. And Mallett ends up throwing an 80-yard bomb to Kobe Hamilton, and I think a couple LSU DBs collided, a little Keystone Cop stuff, but and that 80-yard touchdown at the end of the half, and then also that they beat Arkansas, won at Georgia that year, and Georgia was always really good like they always are, and they came back and tied the game late. Georgia didn't make it at 17-0, and I'm thinking, oh man, it's going to go into overtime. It was a day game, but I was still worried about deadlines, and then the Childs makes this awesome cut, and Mallett hits him for a touchdown. They end up winning down at Georgia, a really huge win for the program to knock off the Bulldogs in Athens. And just on a personal, I'm not going to pretend I knew Ryan real well, but he was always a fun guy to cover. I mean, just because the big plays he could make, the big arm, he's a fun-loving guy, just the ultimate, gunslinger confidence. He threw some interceptions that frustrated people maybe, but I think he threw 62 touchdowns to 18 or 19 interceptions, so great ratio, so many big plays. You knew he felt like, he kind of reminds me of somebody like Brett Favre. He felt like he could probably squeeze that ball into any window, and most of the time he could. Quinn Grovey, I talked to Quinn yesterday, and I thought he had a really good line that I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, but he said no blade of grass was safe on the field, and by that he meant Ryan could throw the ball anywhere and, get it to anybody anywhere on the field. So, just, when you heard the news Tuesday afternoon, I guess it was, just a shock. You basically were thinking, no, this can't be right. This has got to be somebody's messed up or somebody's idea of a sick joke. But unfortunately it turned out to be true.
Well, I appreciate you going through some of those memories with us, Bob. That's not the easiest thing to do. Also read your story in the Democrat about Houston Nutt. You made sure to list out the rest of the inductees into the Hall of Honor, but Houston Nutt stands out for obvious reasons as a long-tenured head coach at Arkansas who had a good measure of success, couple of SEC Coach of the Year awards, couple of SEC West titles. But also, a guy that came with certainly a little controversy, maybe a little more than just a little. Definitely the way that things ended in Fayetteville. But this also makes it seem, this reminds me a little bit, and it's different, it's much different, but it reminds me a little bit of, when when you got Nolan Richardson, was kind of mentioned a little bit more by the powers that be at the university, and you saw his name on the court, and he started coming back to games and all of that. This kind of has a little bit of that feel to it.
Yeah, I mean, let me start off by saying I think it's an honor Houston definitely deserves. He's one of the best coaches in Arkansas history when you look at the numbers, and certainly in the SEC. I mean, he won 75 games overall in 10 years. That's, even I know that's 7.5 average a year, which if you round up, that's about 8 wins a year. I think on average, that's pretty impressive. And he had a winning record in SEC play. I think it was 42-38. And I know Arkansas fans, they want more than that. But if you look at the history of the program, the SEC has been so challenging for Arkansas. That's a pretty impressive record. He's the last coach to beat a number one team in his very last game to beat LSU down in Baton Rouge in triple overtime. He's the last coach to beat Alabama in 2006. I know that wasn't vintage Alabama, but still, they beat him. And he's the last coach to beat Nick Saban. And when Nick Saban was at LSU, the miracle on Markham. So I think Matt might remember that game. But Matt would be the last Arkansas quarterback to beat Nick Saban too. But there's a lady going again. But yeah, but it's complicated because obviously things didn't end well. He basically felt like he had no choice, but I think to resign or else, he couldn't. You think if you go 18-8 at Arkansas in 2 years, you're going to buy some pretty good capital. But really, I think Houston, if Arkansas had not won, maybe 8 games or something in 2008, I think he probably would have gotten replaced. Frank Burroughs had retired as AD, and he was Houston's guy. Jeff Long was coming in. I don't think he felt any loyalty to Houston, so he left the program reluctantly. I think that's safe to say. And then he went to Ole Miss, which really takes things off because he went to a rival. But if you're Houston and you get a good job offer and you feel like you were essentially kind of forced to make a change, what do you do? So I think it's a complicated legacy, but I think if you look back at it, he had a really good run, and I think, he probably had some bitter feelings about feeling like, well, man, I did a pretty good job here, and people, at least a faction of people wanted rid of me. But I think Houston can look back now and appreciate, what he did, and still had a lot of fans in his corner. And so I think it's a good thing for Houston. It's a good thing for Arkansas.
Bob, I want to end on a sad note, and I'd known about this before you tweeted it. An RIP to your feline friend Whitaker. I know you tweeted about her, and I mentioned because you saw in your tweet, you might have heard her on the radio. I think you're referring to our show because there were a couple of times that we heard Sweet Whitaker, who I guess had some opinions about Razorback sports, but you had her for 19 years, so my condolences.
19 years,
and all
9 months. Yeah, and one time on the SEC coast when Steve Spurrier was the coach of South Carolina, I had my speakerphone on because I was taping it. I asked him a question, and so, like an open mic, and Whitaker meows, and I think Spurrier said something like, "Was that a cat?" Or Chuck Dunlap, the moderator, somebody brought up. So she was on the SEC coaches teleconference, and there's been Zooms where she likes to jump up on the back of my chair and meow, and yeah, she was really a great cat, and I want to say, I tweeted out some, I guess, because I sort of wanted to pay a tribute to her, and had a lot of good responses from people, and so I appreciate everybody's kind words about Whitaker.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.